listening to the Film Yappers, the podcast where two film buffs with too many opinions and just enough credentials dive deep into the movies you love. The ones you hate, the ones you pretend to have seen, or the ones you are ashamed to admit that you love. From cult classics to fresh releases, they break down what works, what doesn't, and why it matters, one reel at a time. Dr. William Wells, intellectual historian and culture critic, is joined by his co-host and independent filmmaker Ethan Korpinen. Yappers, take it away.
All right. Well, welcome to the Logophile presents the Film Yappers.
Welcome back. This is our first episode of 2026, which is kind of crazy.
That's right. And
Yeah.
we picked a banger. It's definitely in my top 20 movies of all time, and probably even my favorite James Cameron movie. He's definitely I would put Terminator 2 and Aliens up there. I still think that this is his so
My
far.
dad would agree with you. This is his favorite too. He's been telling me about it for years, even before you brought it up to me. Like, I think the first time he mentioned this movie to me was, I don't know, I think I was eighth grade or I don't know, maybe a freshman in high school. We had just, I think I just watched Terminator 2 and I was just telling him how much I loved it. And I was like, I need to watch more of James Cameron's movies. And he was like, oh yeah, The Abyss. Like that's one of my favorite movies of all time, and just, so it's been just in the back of my mind for basically a decade now. And I only just watched it for the first time. It definitely lived up to the hype for me. I get it. It's a really cool movie. It kind of feels a little bit like if Interstellar was like underwater, like it kind
Mm.
of has all the makings of a space expedition movie, but it just takes place underwater instead, which I think is really cool.
It was nice to see a lot of the tropes used in space science fiction used in The Abyss. And I think, and I hope that people will comment below if you think this is true. It also, this film sparked a huge surge in interest in the ocean as a setting for undersea things as a really exciting setting. There was a what I would call the Timu uh, version of The Abyss called Leviathan that came out around the same time with Peter Weller. It's a decent movie on its own, steals a lot from The Thing, but it's fascinating how many similarities there are between that movie and this one. But I always think about Sequest DSV, which was a hugely popular show in its first season, which was essentially Star Trek in a submarine.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so they had all these undersea adventures in this gigantic experimental submarine, and Roy Scheider was the captain, and it was just a really exciting, interesting, amazing show that blew all of its potential in the second season. Let me set it up for you. The Abyss is a science fiction thriller directed by James Cameron. Film was released on August 9th, 1989 by Century Fox, received great reviews and grossed 90 million against a 45 million budget. The Academy was nominated for 4 awards and won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects, and we'll be talking about that quite a bit. Special recognition has to be given to the two lead actors, Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio, as well as the multiple time Cameron collaborator, Michael Biehn. So, the plot. After a U.S. nuclear submarine suffers a mysterious accident near a deep ocean trench near the Cayman Islands, The Navy recruits an oil rig crew from the experimental underwater platform Deep Core to assist with the recovery. Foreman Bud Brigman, who's played by Ed Harris, leads the operation. The operation's complicated immediately by the arrival of his estranged and soon to be divorced wife and project designer, Lindsay, played by Master Antonio, whose history with Bud turns the professional tension into personal volatility. Uh, what begins as a salvage mission during a hurricane, it's complicated enough, becomes this slow, unnerving confrontation with multiple threats at once. So, a young Navy SEAL officer, Lieutenant Coffey, played by Michael Biehn, takes command of a military detachment and grows increasingly unstable under pressure and oxygen mix effects, something known as deep ocean psychosis. He interprets the situation as hostile and escalating towards violence. At the same time, the crew starts encountering inexplicable phenomena in the water, including a luminous, intelligent presence that seems to be observing rather than attacking. The film balances procedural details, human conflict, um, numerous science fiction tropes, and outright spectacle, moving from equipment failures and flooding disasters to moments of wonder. Spoilers will be coming at some point later in the video. We'll put a doobly doo down in the comments.
Yeah, a little
Um,
spoiler warning,
yeah,
just yeah,
yeah,
do not
but
proceed past this section if you've not seen the movie. But it's been out for almost 40 years. You've had plenty of time to watch it. So if you haven't seen it, that's on you. No, I'm kidding.
what do you think about the dynamic between Bud as this stubborn, kind of classic masculine but responsible character versus Lindsay, who's competent under stress? Maybe she's very committed or overcommitted to this project. You kind of get a sense that maybe that's why their marriage failed at some level, though they explain that she wanted the project to be used in one way and they didn't agree with her, so she was moved to something else, I think.
It's probably what brought them together in the first place too, is their shared love of the ocean. You know what I mean? Like whatever
Hmm.
that entailed, and because she was as committed or overcommitted as she was, that same thing kind of drove them apart. It can be hard to like balance your personal life and your work life when, they're kind of like mutually exclusive in that way, where if that makes sense, where it's like your relationship was built around that, and it kind of becomes your personal life too. So yeah, balancing that can be really hard. It kind of reminded me a bit of like the dynamic between the two leads in like Twister, just because
Hmm.
Bill
Hmm.
Paxton's character in that film, he's like in the middle of a divorce with Helen Hunt's character. And I think at some point he was like a tornado watcher, and he, just goes over to a ragtag gang of, misfits, and he's like, I got the divorce papers here. And then she's just like, oh yeah, I'll deal with that in a second. Just tag along with us while we're scouting this tornado. And he gets roped into it, and it kind of ends up repairing their marriage, which is kind of what happens in this movie too. It's pretty awkward, but they're now having to kind of work together again and kind of put aside their past troubles and so forth. But it's kind of beautiful in the sense that I think that there is some unresolved feelings, and time has kind of done its thing in a way. And I think that there are moments where the movie kind of hints their relationship is kind of rekindling, So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah. It's a
You
really kind
know,
of touching story about two people who fell apart, kind of falling back in love again, in just the midst of this kind of conquest. movie that, takes place underwater.
After the prologue involved with the submarine, once the principal part of the movie starts, one of the first things he does is yank off his wedding ring and throw it in a toilet. That's a deeply emotional thing to do. We're not talking about just throwing it overboard where it's
Yeah.
gone. It's like it's in the toilet.
Hmm.
And then, of course, he has to stick his hand back down in the toilet, gets the ring out, and at a key moment in the film, that ring actually will save his life in a very bizarre way.
Yep.
What I like about, and I'm going to give it to Master Antonio for doing this, she is a strong woman without telling everybody that she's a strong woman. Her character, she
James
lends
Cameron's good at that. He's really good at,
gonna get
writing
yeah,
powerful female
that's
characters.
exactly right. That's
Yeah.
we have to give him credit for that because you see it in Aliens with Ripley and you see it in Terminator 2, which has to be the most dramatic transformation any actress has ever made between movies. So what I was trying to say is that the film does a good job of showing how these two strong characters, they're very strong-willed, both of them, and we're given one of the greatest death scenes in cinema history. I will just put it this way that Bud is trying to revive Lindsay after she has drowned.
Excuse me.
And that scene has been done a million times in a million different movies, but this is the number one best and most intense filming. And we even learned that apparently during the making of the film, because so many technical problems were going on, the filming was so complex that they they missed, or at least part of it was not filming. They had cut, and the actors didn't know it. And so the shots of Ed Harris reacting and some of it were done by himself, which makes that scene even more amazing.
Yeah, his performance in that scene too is
It's
fantastic.
100%. He didn't leave
Yeah.
anything on the. He left it all on the field. He left it
Yeah.
all on the field.
I remember like getting, chills when I first saw it. Just like that's probably the most intense like revival scene in a movie where a character's like, like, come on, don't die on me, and we've all
That is
seen that before,
literally
but
exactly what I just said 2 minutes ago. That is, you just
yeah, I'm agreeing
repeated.
with you. You're welcome.
Okay, okay. Good Lord. Let's talk about coffee. Everybody loves coffee.
Wait till you get a load of
The,
this
the
coffee.
film, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
This is strong, strong coffee. Played by Michael Biehn, probably maybe his best role, maybe tied with Tombstone, maybe
Power Reese and Terminator.
timed with Terminator, but I mean, it's up there. He really, again, I think this is a guy who gives it his all. I don't know if the sweat was real. It felt real
Oh yeah, he's like sweating like profusely in every scene, like in the
in
film.
every
Like
scene.
I think they're really just trying to give you the sense that this guy's like losing it. Like he's on the verge of just,
He is
just
soaking
psychologically
wet
cracking,
even in a film that's filmed underwater. He is still soaking
Yeah,
wet
yeah.
the
But
entire time.
you really get the sense this guy's about to snap any second. You said he had some form of psychosis due to being so
So, deep
deep.
ocean psychosis. They talk about how this is that happens. There's multiple factors, like for one thing, being under intense, maybe psychological pressure while you're under the ocean. I think on Futurama, I'm really this is a deep cut, but on Futurama they called it ocean madness or the deep down crazies or and then Professor Farnsworth says he may be guilty of ocean madness, but that's no excuse for ocean rudeness. But it's a type of psychosis, and sometimes this happens with divers that are using the wrong mix of nitrogen, so they get something called nitrogen narcosis, which leads to hallucinations, paranoia, and all of that. Paranoia, delirium are all features of this.
Same with
And
trimmers as well. Like he gets hand trimmers throughout the
hand
film. You see,
tremors,
yeah.
which is supposed to be a sign of that. Sometimes this can be something, any type of hyperbaric, high stress environment. And there's a certain percentage of people that are susceptible to this. They bring this up in the film. I don't know that that's necessarily true, that there are just certain people that get it and some who don't. But that's maybe a trope just to use for the film. But very quickly we realize that he is an unstable character, which makes him one of the villains or antagonists. We have at least two other antagonists. One is this possible alien or at least unknown presence, which apparently caused an American nuclear sub to go down. And then you also have the ocean itself. And at many points in the film, the ocean is the antagonist. The abyss itself, this deep trench of water, is just instant death.
Hmm.
And everyone, they're working around it, but they're constantly having to be protected. There's this interesting moon pool room where you can, dive in. You have to equalize the pressure and all that, and that's how they interface with the outside of deep core. But just interesting, the environment as an antagonist. There are some movies that do that really well. Perfect Storm and others, but this is a really very effective use of that.
This is
And so
certainly one of the better man versus nature movies that I've seen in my life. Probably maybe even in the top five. I can't really think, not too many are coming up to the top of my head. This might be the best. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. But
well, that's a good point. You've got, as far as conflicts, you've got man versus man, and that in a simple terms that comes to the crew versus the military crew that are there with them. You've got like you said, man versus nature, which is the ocean, also the hurricane. We can't forget that. There's the tension between the crew below and the company above that are up on the ocean, who are also having tension with the military on the surface. um, and then, of course, there's America versus Russia and all of the paranoia and sort of because we're right at the verge of the ending of the Cold War. I mean, this came out in '89,
right.
so
And it was probably shot in 88. So
it mostly
yeah.
shot in '88. So there's all this paranoia about the Russians, and that paranoia is reflected through the military guys who, with the exception of Coffee, seem to be patriotic, well balanced, good soldiers.
The other Navy SEALs, right? Um, they kind of just back up everything he says and does, and they're kind of like his um
At
right hand.
first,
Well,
at
yeah,
first,
but even they start to kind of like realize this guy is losing it, and but because of just the ranking system, they kind of have to, have his back throughout most of the film, and that's kind of a scary position to be in as a soldier, is like, when you're following orders from someone who's not all there and you know it, but you can't necessarily disobey. That kind of puts you in an interesting moral dilemma,
well, when your chain of command is cut off, which in some senses it is,
Mhm.
between his commanding officers and him, all the pressure is on him to make the right decision. But his orders, and this is something, it's very clear that there's a critique in the film of not the military. Cameron's, I have criticisms of his filmmaking in lots of ways and other films, but Cameron is not dumb, and he doesn't villainize the military as an entire class of
No,
people.
of course not.
But what he's criticizing is a type of militaristic thinking where any unknown is a threat. And so it's unknown what the Russians will do. So we have to grab all these nukes because maybe they'll get them first. So
Hmm.
that's one thing. The next thing is if we think the Russians are going to get them, we're going to detonate them all, which is just insane.
Yeah.
And then finally, the idea that because we don't know what's down in the ocean depths, we got to send a nuke down to destroy them, which is just
Lunacy. Yeah.
you know here's a guy that's willing to nuke the Atlanteans before he's ever seen Atlantis. He's ready
Yeah.
to kill everybody and everything.
I
um
wonder if that's what Ed Harris is thinking when he was finally showing kind of like the aliens Atlantis empire, where he's like, man, this guy was really about to nuke this place, just
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, it
place is
really
awesome.
yeah, yeah. Not the
James
movie.
Cameron really likes the ocean, so
He suffers from ocean obsession.
derangement syndrome.
Yeah, ocean derangement syndrome. No, and that's, I mean, that's cool. I I wonder if the process of making this film, as difficult and dangerous and life-threatening as it was, and a couple of people almost died. We don't have to go into all that, but
No, we
there were
will,
some
but that'll be
very
later
close
on.
calls in making this. But maybe the reason why we have Titanic and the Avatar movie is because he discovered this love for the ocean that
He's also
made
done
him.
several documentaries under the
Yeah.
ocean too, like feature length documentaries. In fact, this is
Oh
kind of
yeah.
crazy. I think he was shooting one when he first like he was like I think he was in a submarine shooting some like oceanic dock, and he was just thousands of feet under the water. And this is September 11th, and I've seen the video of this. The submarine when it came back to the surface, Bill Paxton was there, and he literally told him like, "Hey, this is the biggest terrorist attack on U.S. soil just happened. The World Trade Center has been hit."
Has been hit.
And that's how he learned that. But he was basically shooting something underwater while this was going on, and I think it was a couple of hours after the fact when he came back up finally. And there was just so many people there waiting for him to come back up so they could just tell him and like kind of shut down production for the day, because everything was shut down. So I mean, this was even after he shot Titanic that he just still went back under the ocean to shoot some documentary. But yeah, there's a lot of like technology that he used in this movie that he would later use for Terminator 2, Judgment Day, for the androids, it's the T-1000, right? Or is it the
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. The police officer one, he has the ability to basically
Robert Patrick. He can turn into any shape, just like in Terminator 2, the filmmaking technology used to make the water tentacle, is what we'll call it in the abyss, is used in Terminator 2. I think one of the documentaries that we watched said that this is where he got his diving certification, was in the
oh, okay.
process of training, so that he could do all of this work. Besides the liquid special effects, before there was all the computer generated stuff, I mean, it was absolutely breathtaking. The first time I saw it, I had never seen anything like that in a film. Even as somebody that wasn't paying attention maybe to the finer parts of filmmaking, recognized it immediately in Terminator 2. Is like, oh, I saw that in the abyss. This liquid breathing technology
Uh-huh.
that is mentioned in the film, at the time, there had been extensive testing on it. And it was definitely an experimental program that the United States and Japan were both involved in, and neither were able to really effectively use it with human beings. So the idea is that you're able to breathe a liquid that's highly enriched in oxygen, and that would prevent you from suffering a lot of the deep pressure problems in the deep part of the ocean. But it doesn't work as of, well, certainly in '89, they were able to do it with lab rats. The lab rats survived without any problems, but the people that tested it described it as like, well, it's just like drowning, and but the sensation doesn't go away. It's not like this is what the film doesn't say is that you keep feeling like you're drowning.
Hmm.
It doesn't ever, so that's not a practical thing. Most people could not tolerate this for more than a few seconds, really.
Right.
And so, what I discovered, Denmark announced 3 months ago that they have now created a new way to do this that seems to work. This time they actually used pigs, and the pigs were able
Interesting.
to successfully breathe this
Huh.
liquid, the same liquid, by the way, that's mentioned in the movie. It's called oxygenated perfluorocarbon,
Okay.
and the pigs lasted 45 minutes before they were brought up
Wow.
and didn't suffer any bad effects. So they are trialing this with human beings right now. Uh, and that is really an amazing science fiction prediction that sort of nails technology before its time. But it's funny that it was something that was already being tested when the film came out.
Right.
Do
Right.
you want to talk about the problems that they had filming?
Oh yeah. So because James Cameron wanted to, well, initially he wanted to shoot this in the actual ocean. James Cameron wanted to ensure that he had as much control over the film as possible. He wanted to shoot this in the Cayman Islands initially because that's where much of the film takes place. He wanted to shoot it in the actual ocean. That idea was kind of quickly scrapped because they were like, we're just not going to be able to have control over this. The ocean is unpredictable. We're not going to light it the way we want to light it. So basically, they filled these large tanks that I believe were these, were at like from an abandoned, nuclear facility
Yep,
from like,
yep.
yeah, in South Carolina, I believe.
South Carolina.
Yeah, so they filled two of them,
Two
and
of
they shot up to, I mean, sometimes 12 hours, 10 to 12 hours at a time, just underwater, like exclusively. And the actors would, they would have no way to like, they had no comms or whatever, but they were able to, they had underwater equipment so they could breathe and all that. But they were getting direction from James Cameron, who was underwater with them at the time. So he was able to communicate with them verbally, but they could not communicate back. So they had to kind of find their own way to talk to each other because they couldn't hear each other. So they'd have to get really close and basically yell in their masks, like when they were, addressing one of the other actors in between takes. Um, and this was just really cool because they had a safety diver assigned to each of the actors. So this was all planned very well. Like it wasn't, the problems that arise were not really a result of like sheer incompetence or whatever. Like a lot of
No,
planning went into this. You could tell they cared about safety.
I think they were trying to be as safe as they could, and the problem was they still were not safe
Right.
enough.
It's it, it's
It's just so complicated what they were trying to do.
it's kind of hard to strike that balance between authenticity while also ensuring safety for your cast and crew and all that, especially at the time, because, I don't think anyone really had done underwater scenes to this extent before from a practical standpoint. What's really cool is to avoid, I guess, having any interference with the sun, because you're always going to have natural light. So they basically uh, covered the surface of the water with these black beads. and so it covered the surface entirely, and it prevented the rays of the sun from, I guess, being visible in the shot. So, which is
Right.
just really smart. You brought up something which was interesting when we were watching this like short documentary, like making a video of the abyss. You mentioned like I hope that these like water tanks are still filled up. It'd be cool if like they just let people, if they wanted to shoot like a scene underwater for something, they could just go to South Carolina.
I wonder if Sequest used them. For example,
Yeah,
I wonder
good
if,
question.
because that would have only been, 4 years maybe later.
Yeah. If
That,
anyone can find out for us, drop it in the comments. We'd like to know. Yeah, it'd be
yeah.
really cool. So there was one specific, I guess, anecdote that I read about where James Cameron was, just being kind of the control freak that he's known to be, kind of lost track of time and didn't even notice that his oxygen tank had hit zero, and he was 35 feet underwater. So he basically had to just go like, he had to swim all the way up to the
He had to drop
surface.
his weight
Yeah.
and ascend to try to get a breath of air. And then his safety diver
Yep. His safety diver noticed, and then he basically, grabbed
tried to
onto
give
him,
him his
tried to give
respirator.
him his oxygen, gave him more water instead. And James Cameron, with nothing left to do, because I mean, I imagine that moment he
We're
probably thought
we're
he was going to
laughing at a
die.
man almost dying, but it just seems like,
He punched
uh-oh,
he
that's a
punched the
real
safety diver in the
punched
face
him in the
to get him to
face.
let go of him. He was like, "Let go of me! You're giving me more water. This is not helping." And the safety diver was fired immediately.
And Cameron's assistant, who was supposed to be monitoring his oxygen level, that
Right.
guy was
Yes.
also fired. Why he didn't know that he was out of air, I don't know.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
But
literally his
then he
job.
was
So,
ascending too quickly. So he was going to get, the bends, which is what happens when nitrogen starts. I believe it's nitrogen starts foaming out of your blood, coming out of solution. So they had to grab him and throw him into the um, hyperbaric chamber that they had set up, so, so that he wouldn't suffer the bends. And then he had to breathe oxygen for several hours, pure oxygen.
I don't know. Personally, I cannot even comprehend being just submerged underwater for like 10 to 12 hours at a time. Like even if you
No,
know, are able to breathe, I just like how
that's too
just
much
being
anyway.
underwater for like for an entire day is just mind-boggling to me. I don't know.
And then you had Cass getting all of these skin conditions,
Right.
suffering all these problems from being in these big tanks, which I guess they said they were chlorinated, but they were hyperchlorinated.
Yeah.
So the chlorine was affecting them and causing them to have rashes and, all kinds of breathing problems. So the production side of this, I mean, there's a reason why the cast started calling this Son of Abyss.
I hope at the very least, they were proud of how it turned out. It's a very good movie, and I hope that they can separate some of the, rougher parts of the experience with how the film turned out. That's kind of always like the thing like the director hopes for when like they're making a film where it's kind of a nightmare for the cast and crew. They always have that moment where like, well, at least if it's good, they'll forgive me for a lot of the stuff that's happening. So I hope like that the cast is able to like look back on it and be proud of it and not have
I
regret over
wonder.
it.
Well, I think Master Antonio has said, um, "I love what we did, but don't ask me if I enjoyed it or
Right.
something to that effect."
Yeah.
And we haven't seen Ed Harris in another Cameron movie.
We have
Actually,
not.
we haven't seen Master Antonio either.
Yeah.
They
Well,
both may have been. They were both.
Ed Harris almost lost his life while shooting this movie too, not just James Cameron. There was a situation where I think this was during like they were shooting like the final sequence race to basically descend by himself, and his helmet is filled with the liquid you were talking about, right? But they did not shoot the scene that way. I think he had to actually shoot it with like where it was filled with actual water. And so basically they had like, the safety diver just watching him like a hawk, and every like 30 seconds or so they had to like come over to him and give him more oxygen. I
Mhm.
just can't even imagine logistically how much of a nightmare it was to shoot that sequence because if you have a shot that runs for longer than 30 seconds, how do you work around that and make it invisible like having someone come over, feed him oxygen? I don't know. It's just
Yeah.
wild. It's just mind-boggling to me. Ed Harris noticed at one point that his safety diver got tangled in something and wasn't able to, he kind of got like left behind, and he wasn't able to like help him because he was busy trying to untangle himself. And he was like this close to drowning and he almost died. And I remember like from that video that we watched that he like had to pull over on the way back from set because he was just crying because he was this close to losing his life.
And Ed Harris, of all the
Wild.
actors, it's hard to envision him crying
Oh
about his.
yeah, but I mean when you're that close
He's
to, everyone's afraid of death, man.
if it sort of broke him that way, you know how serious it was. Do you think that Cameron was making an overall point? I mean, depending on if you see the extended so-called director's cut or the briefer version, I'm definitely a fan. Usually, I'm an extended cut kind of guy, but just like actually the same with Donnie Darko, shorter versions, the theatrical cuts are much, 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 much better
Mhm.
in my mind because in both cases, this so-called director's cut includes too much information, takes a
Agreed.
lot of the mystery and the wonder out of it, and sort of like, here, let me explain everything to you in case you
Yep.
missed anything.
We didn't watch the extended cut, but I have seen clips of it online, just like scenes that were added, well, that were shot, but like were not used for the theatrical cut. And
Very
I,
preachy. It's
yeah, and I feel like the
very
stakes were
preachy.
just too high. It became too much of an end of the world scenario. That's already kind of a given when there's nuclear warheads like at play, but like, the aliens basically are able to like manipulate and control the ocean. So they, create these tsunami waves that go over these like cities around the globe that are near the coast. And the tsunami waves are kind of just hanging there. And it's like the aliens are kind of like just hanging them there as a threat. They're almost trying to kind of make a point like of how human beings are, just their own worst enemy and kind of
Well,
their capacity for self-destruction.
this is essentially the problem because if the aliens are saying you are self-destructive. You're going to ruin the world for everybody with nuclear weapons. These weapons of mass destruction. We're going to use weapons of mass destruction first
Right.
to kill everyone.
Makes them
So
kind of hypocrites, right?
what kind of ethical stance is that? That's
Yeah.
that it doesn't it
It's not
doesn't
the gotcha they
really
think it is.
it's really not. And I
Yeah.
would hope that aliens would be a little more intelligent.
Right.
However, you could say, well, they never intend to destroy humanity. They're trying to show them that, hey, we're threatening you. This is what we can do unless you change your ways. Maybe the effect of that then is to unify humanity. Okay, that sounds good against the new enemy, the deep ocean. So now humanity is
At war
unified
with Atlantis.
and at war with Atlantis.
Yeah. We're
Is
going to
that
war with Atlantis.
so? I'm going to say a bit of a fail as far as the moral ethical dimension where I think they're trying to
Yeah.
do, and I'm assuming that's Cameron doing that.
I get
There,
what he's going for. I think it's just flawed execution. There's something I wanted to kind of bring up as well because I wonder if this is like the first that features aliens to kind of have the twist where like the aliens are not actually the bad guys, you know?
Okay.
Because I think several movies have kind of followed that. Like I think of like Contact with Jodie Foster, but I also think of like Arrival with Amy Adams, where like,
Rivals
aliens
is
arrive and it's very ominous and 80% of the film is like humans trying to figure out what the aliens want. And then at the end you find out that the aliens actually want to help humanity. But, it's not clear what the motive of the aliens are in this movie, but they do make it clear that they are not humanity's foe or enemy when they rescue Ed Harris. The
think
reason they
of
rescue him is because they see the kind of undying love that he has for his ex-wife when he types in the message, I love you. When he thinks he's about to drown towards the end, he kind of makes the decision to descend by himself, knowing that he is going to die, or that he will likely die. And
Mhm.
one of the aliens picks him up, takes him to their civilization. He kind of gets a really brief look at it. It's very colorful. Um, and it looks a little bit like Atlantis, but like not really. It's kind of
No,
um,
we're being facetious when we say that. It's
yeah,
not
yeah.
does not look like an underwater human civilization in any sense. It's very non-human.
But when he, is able to take his gear off and he's able to breathe, he sees the message that he typed to his ex-wife projected in front of him. And that's the alien's way of telling him, like, that's why we saved you. And I think that that's just seeing that connection that those two characters had made the aliens realize just the inherent goodness that people have, in general.
To go back to your original question, this is a first contact movie. So, that science fiction trope, humanity in contact with something very different for the first time. There have been quite a few movies with that idea, and the stories as far as the basis of them go back even further. And they're short stories like Arena, which was at one point adapted into one of the classic original Star Trek. They made that into an episode because it's such an award-winning story. Interesting thing is because we've got a non-human intelligence, where we see all these variations of communicating without language. We only see his language mirrored back to him. We don't know that it's implied that they understand it, but we don't know that. We only know that it's being mirrored because you remember when the water tentacle comes in, and the tentacle is basically kind of a probe. It's a technology of the aliens, and it starts making faces and interacting with the crew, and everybody's sort of excited because they realize, hey, this isn't a threat at all. It's
Right.
interesting. It tries to make the different faces of different people, so it's mirroring. I'm going to keep using that word, I guess. Mirroring the people. It seems to be curious, and it shows quite a bit of restraint. I mean, if you have a water tentacle, you could easily drown someone. It doesn't react violently when Coffee cuts it off. He
Right.
basically shuts the door and kills it. But it's
Coffee's the
really,
worst. He's
yeah,
the
Coffee.
worst. He
He's the
sucks.
worst.
He sucks.
It's just really, it's an interesting exploration of human and non-human intelligences interacting as kind of a trust building exercise.
Right.
You know, they make a sound, it makes a sound. Lindsay is making like faces, like smiling, and then, and it's doing the same thing.
Could
And
almost
I'm
say
trying
that
to
they
think,
were testing the waters.
yes, they were
Yeah.
testing the water.
Quick question for you. Would you say this has like the best character dying while they scream, like looking direct? You know what I mean? Like that whole cliche where a
Yes,
character like
yes,
looks directly in the
yes,
camera and they know they're about to die,
yes,
so they just let out like a
yeah,
like a
yeah.
last hurrah, kind of like
It's definitely up there.
yeah.
It's if it's not the
I can't think of
best,
many that rival
I
it.
can't think of exactly another one.
I
It's
also
just
love like how handheld a lot of the shots are, like especially the ones where they're like running through the corridors, when there's a
Mhm.
there's a problem happening, and it just makes everything feel really urgent. And I also think the action is just shot and directed in a really dynamic way. There's like a close quarters kind of hand-to-hand fight that Ed Harris has with Michael Bihn's character, and there's basically this swinging like power outlet thing just that's swinging back and forth in front of them, and it's kind of like preventing them from like, taking a hit.
Yeah,
Yeah, it just, I don't know, it
yeah,
just kind of
yeah.
makes the scene more suspenseful. And I feel like it's a detail that a lot of filmmakers today would just not even consider. It's just kind of a cool feature, and I wish
It
more movies
is.
just
It is.
thought of stuff like that.
But this film, there's so much to recommend it. If you like romances, it's got romance. If you like, human drama, there's I mean science fiction, there's lots of action, there's suspense. At least five different sequences that are very suspenseful. When the my favorite parts is the hurricane hitting and the rig problems and the crane and all that. But this film, there's so much to recommend it. If you like romances, it's got romance. If you like, human drama, there's I mean science fiction, there's lots of action, there's suspense. At least five different sequences that are very suspenseful. Especially when one of my favorite parts is the hurricane hitting and the rig problems and the crane and all that. It's fascinating. Fantastic film. Recommend it unreservedly to everybody. And let us know in the comments below what if you've seen it, if you haven't, and hope that hope that you enjoyed as much as we did.
Yeah, let us know what
Also,
your favorite James Cameron movie is in the comments, and also maybe let us know what your favorite Ed Harris performance is as well. We're curious to know about that.
I'd like to give a special shout out to, we've got an interview coming out pretty soon. Not sure if it'll be out before or after this, but when you get a chance, check out our interview with filmmaker Ethan Hunt, who is a fantastic auteur and maker of some great suspense content. So be sure and check him out if you have not done that yet.
Yeah, different
Uh,
Ethan. He has not interviewed me yet, but we'll we'll get to that one day maybe.
What different Ethan? Yes, not
Yeah.
not Ethan K. This is Ethan Hunt,
Yeah.
not of
Just
Mission Impossible
so much
fame,
cooler
but
than Ethan
yeah,
K. I mean,
yeah,
so
yeah,
much
yeah.
cooler. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Film Yappers. We appreciate your support, which you can show by subscribing to the channel, clicking the thumbs up like button below, and sharing with your friends, neighbors, and cousins. We will see you on the next episode of the Film Yappers.